What is up, NFL fans, and welcome back to another episode of The Way We See It. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Wesley Coleman. We only have a couple more weeks of this, man, and we'll be back to our For Your Viewing Pleasure podcast, which is our in-season show. What's up, Wesley? How's it going?
In season, not preseason. We will not be covering preseason games. We'll not be telling you what streaming services you need to find preseason games on and watching along with us.
Yeah.
I'm doing good, man. Hey, so just over the last week, what affected you more, the loss of Hulk Hogan or the loss of Ozzy Osbourne?
To me, it was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
For sure. It was Hulk Hogan. I was a big Hulkamaniac as a kid. I had his little workout box that came with a little tape, inspirational, like Hulk Hogan was on the tape saying, "Come on, brother, you can do it. Say your prayers, take your vitamins." Like, I was a huge Hulk Hogan fan. So definitely me. What about you?
So I've probably had more of my life where I was a Hulk Hogan fan that started younger and lasted longer. Having said that, the Ozzy Osbourne stuff hit me really hard just because of not only his music, but it's really the people he inspired, and the fact that the first ever worldwide tour for Metallica and Pantera and some other bands like that was with Ozzy Osbourne. And how many of them and how big he's been an influence to Tool and other bands like that, and what they went and did in order to see him one last time. I think it hit me harder of just kind of the multiple layers of what he inspired. And how many musicians wouldn't have gone on and followed their dreams knowing they could be as crazy as they wanted on stage or in interviews because of Ozzy Osbourne.
And not to mention, he just did that farewell concert.
That was man.
And so that was tough.
Him singing "Mama, I'm Coming Home" two weeks before dying, it's
tough. But we're gonna press on. The world continues to spin around, and we're getting ready for the NFL regular season. But we are in training camp. And I don't know about you, Wesley, but when you hit training camp, and I said this last week, I love training camp time. I think it's just a lot of fun because, I'm so excited for football to be back, even if they're just in shorts or just putting on pads, it doesn't matter. And for me, the one thing I can't stand are some of these reports that come out, and they're typically, now I guess reporters are getting in on the mix too. They'll give you stat lines from a specific quarterback in 7-on-7. So in your case, maybe Spencer Rattler went 11 for 13 in team drills today. And what about Tyler Shuck? How do you handle reports from training camp, good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, I think the bad ones I take pretty serious, because I think you're set in an environment that's controlled, and you would expect maybe success in that. So when things aren't going good, I'm like, ugh, well, this is in our controlled environment against our own team, and the coaches are so that worries me. If it's 7-on-7 and the offense is doing bad and no pads, I'm like, oh God, because when we get to 11 and 11 on pads, it gets more difficult on the offense real quick. So I don't know. And then the successes, I'm just like, who cares? There's always, I'm guessing every team has a camp beast that you've got people that you remember going oh my God, you guys haven't heard of this name, but you're talking to your casual Steelers fans. You're like, wait till y'all see what's happening with this guy. And he never played a single snap or caught a single ball or got a single touchdown. We've had multiple guys like that. Or
doesn't even make the team. He
doesn't make the team. Or doesn't make. And then when he doesn't make the team, he also doesn't get picked up by other teams. So you're like, wait, no, we've got to have this guy on the 53 because he's all the stuff he's putting on tape. He's going to get picked up immediately and we'll never see him again. And then nobody ever picks it. You're like, what happened?
or the worst is we got to sign this guy to the 53 because if not, he's going to get poached. And we're not even going to get him to the practice squad. So they cut him. He doesn't get picked up. He goes to the practice squad, and then you hear, we need to elevate this guy. He's going to be the difference in the team. We got to get him on the roster, and then finally an injury happens, and he gets on the roster and does absolutely nothing. So
never.
Yeah, that does happen. And
I don't get into the positives. It's just you're in an environment where somebody's supposed to look awesome.
So let's just throw out this hypothetical. If you're a quarterback who's a veteran, let's say it's a seasoned veteran, and his first pass of training camp is an interception, does that bother you?
Depends. Was it picked off by a super great player who went to LSU and returned it for a touchdown, or was it just I don't know?
Maybe let's just run with that scenario.
That Patrick Queen guy I told you that Patrick Queen guy was good.
He's good. I hope he's getting better than what he was last year. Last year, I felt he had a down year. But nonetheless, I mean, Aaron Rodgers was not the only quarterback to throw like a filmed interception on the first few passes. I know Jackson Dart
seemed to.
They did. I don't put too much stock into a lot of these interceptions. A lot of people are freaking out. Oh my gosh. Like Aaron Rodgers himself said to the media, he's like, look, I'm going to throw picks. I'm going to try to make throws in training camp that I necessarily wouldn't make in a real game.
You should. Drew Brees did it all the time.
Yeah.
Drew Brees always did it.
And people are always comparing it. Ben Roethlisberger once had a training camp where he publicly said, I don't want to throw interceptions. And he went all camp without throwing a pick. And then guess what? It didn't equate to success in the regular season.
No, that didn't work.
Because a lot of times you're then being too careful with the football. You're not willing to take the risk. You're not willing to try and throw that pass into a tight window. So in that respect, a lot of people freak out about the things like an interception or two until you do it in... And let's look at your situation in New Orleans. I think that's vastly different than a veteran like Aaron Rodgers, who's been doing it for a long time, been an MVP for 4, and Super Bowl champion. But you have Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, and the third guy I don't even know his name.
Jake Haener. Don't disrespect Jake Haener.
I don't even know his name. But anyways, how do you, when you're watching these quarterbacks, and I see your comments on Twitter with some of the reporters for the Saints and stuff, how are you evaluating their camp production or lack thereof?
Have honestly almost no care for whether or not if there's an interception and stuff like that you're supposed to do that. What I care about is processing time. Are they getting the ball out on time? Are they seeing pre-snap what they're supposed to see, knowing where they're going with the ball, and then getting the ball there? Or really quickly, if the ball's not there, getting it to their check down immediately. But when I see the patting the ball and shuffling the feet and running in place, I'm like, oh my God, dude, because again, that stuff gets worse in 11-on-11 with pads, and it gets worse against a defense that's not your defense, and our defense isn't good. So if they're struggling against a not great defense, so I think that's all I want to see is processing speed. Are you keeping up with the game, and are you getting the ball out on rhythm? And if the defender makes a good play, or your guy doesn't make a good play, like that's not necessarily on you in that situation.
So I have to ask, who has the edge right now after week 1 of training camp?
So none of the three are just doing amazing, but Rattler's clearly winning it because of the processing speed. Tyler Shuck may have had 2 of the best passes total. I mean, of all the passes, like 2, he's thrown 2 amazing balls, but he's had a whole lot of shuffling his feet and patting the ball and not getting the ball out on time, where at least Rattler is making decisions and firing the ball.
What are the odds that none of those 3 are the week 1 starter?
0%.
Oh, okay. So you don't think they're going to try and bring in someone like you brought up Jameis Winston last week. So you don't think that'll happen? I
mean, he might get brought in. He wouldn't be the week 1 starter. Okay. If they brought him in, it'd be a veteran presence and more of the team stuff. I don't think they actually do that. I think what their goal is, they need to find out if either one of the guys can play quarterback in the NFL in 2026. So I think with Shuck kind of being behind the 8 ball a little bit on processing speed, because he has a year behind Rattler in NFL experience, I think Rattler probably starts the first 6 to 8 games because of him and because of the team. Doesn't have a great record at that time, and then they switch to Shucks so over the next 2 or 3 months he can speed up his processing and then see what he can actually do the second half of the season. But I do predict that the Saints will be drafting a quarterback in the top 3 picks in the 2026 draft.
All right. All right. That sounds fun. We'll talk about that for sure. But I think the biggest reports coming out of camp that are the serious variety are injuries. And you hate to see players go down. I know recently the Dallas Cowboys, Tyler Guyton, one of their tackles, was injured. They feared an ACL. Turns out it wasn't an ACL, but he's still going to miss upwards of 6 to 8 weeks. That is the gut punch of all gut punches, especially when you see young players that are just trying to make their way onto a 50A, not that team that they're necessarily on, but just trying to make their way onto someone's roster, and they have something like an Achilles rupture or they tear an ACL. Any injuries stand out to you around the NFL that we've heard so far?
Well, I know it's a few days ago, but you were pretty shook up when you reached out to me about the Justin Fields potential injury. And so I know that it was a big deal to see him back out there the next day as a Warrior. By the way, I'm just going to tell you, whether it's in a game or practice, if you get carted off, do not be on the field for 3 days. I don't care. Because, listen, if it was, oh, it was a dislocated toe, he's fine the next day, and he's on the field the next day, then you shouldn't have been on the cart the day before. Like, at least keep playing the part. Like, something you could have learned from Hulk Hogan. Like, once you're bleeding, you got to have a bandage the next day. There has to be a Band-Aid the next day. You can't just, like, be fine. So, but, I mean, yeah, I mean, when we're talking about significant injuries to starters in the league, like during preseason when it's just in your team practices, that sucks. That's a rough one, and I don't want to see that even for my most hated teams, Dallas Cowboys. I'm glad that Tyler Guyton's okay. Hopefully he's good for the start of the season.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit away from training camp to the story that's been going around. There's definitely multiple prongs to this story, if you want to put it that way. I'm going to try to leave the innuendos out of this, and that is the Christian Wilkins story out of Las Vegas. Him getting cut. The Raiders are trying to avoid guaranteed money. He's not happy. There's a story of kissing teammates on the head, I guess. I don't know. This situation is weird. You've got people like Adam Schefter going on the Pat McAfee show and trying to kind of poo-poo some of the reports that are out there, whereas people are like, yeah, man, I get that you're part of the NFL cog, but we're hearing this is not what happened. What do you think about this mess in Vegas that is the Christian Wilkins situation?
Well, I'll tell you what I think by asking you a question.
Oh,
if Christian Wilkins hadn't basically done nothing since signing a 4-year, $110 million deal, would we be having this conversation? If last year he had hit the numbers, he'd played the snaps and hit the numbers he was supposed to hit when that deal was signed, would we be talking about this?
No,
0%. This is Christian Wilkins, since he got paid, doesn't really seem to have interest in being a football player or being a professional or being out there for his team or working hard, is what it seems like. And none of this would be happening. If Christian Wilkins had 13 sacks last year and played all 17 games, none of this would be happening. The guy who didn't want to be kissed would be cut.
I'm trying really hard to not say make some comments about being there for your team.
Sometimes these are big guys. Sometimes they have like areas of their back they can't reach and that they need to be scratched. Like, you got to have guys that you're comfortable with and that you can rely on.
All right, so let me ask you this. So the Raiders are trying to get out of guaranteed dollars in a contract.
That's what this is. $35 million almost. Yeah.
This is going to be a situation to watch, though. Am I right? From a contractual standpoint, if the Raiders are actually able to say, whether it was verbiage in the contract or whether it was whatever, that they don't own the guaranteed money, does that not open the door for other teams to kind of say, look, if they were able to do it, we might be able to do it, not to the extent of a Deshaun Watson contract, but what's your thought on that aspect of it?
I mean, and then like what happens with like, what do you have, like the backup long snapper during preseason? You're like, hey, we need you to go to wink it. Why don't you sit next to the guy who's been missing all the time that we owe all the money?
Take pictures of his feet for us, please.
I mean, listen, like, and he was released as the terminated vested veteran is what the big term was, so that they could actually get their money back. Yeah, man, I think it opens a door, but like, there's so much that goes on with this guaranteed money, and this is where all this other stuff comes from, with the NFL not wanting to guarantee money, so they're not in these situations where people earn their big paycheck and then become a psycho or become lazy. I don't know. This is it's a weird situation. The thing that makes it weirder is that obviously Christian Wilkins has things on tape, on football fields, where he has been a strange person in regards to touching other men.
Yeah.
Like whether his teammates or not. And so there's now all those things happened before he signed this contract. And we're just fine when they thought he was going to produce. So I don't know. I have to think that both sides, Christian Wilkins and the Raiders, don't want this played out publicly as far as like what statements are going to be made about what more and more happen. I think that we have this story right now, this quick. I think that there's more to it. There's other incidents. And there's, I just think that if this actually like starts coming out, I think it's going to be pretty weird for Christian Wilkins. And I've seen some people speculate that they're not saying what they know, but some people saying they don't think he'll be on an NFL roster again, which would be a really big deal.
Yes, it would. And he would be the first player that is, you do one thing, you get cut, and all of a sudden all the other teams are like, what's going on? And they're like, you don't want any part of this guy. And then they're just gone. They're done. And they just kind of move on. Interesting situation. We'll see how it plays out. This is also an important week. We have NFL preseason football this week, and this is the Hall of Fame week. And it's kind of weird. It's kind of coincided with the baseball. I don't know if that's always been the case, but I did love, by the way, a quick shout out to Ichiro. I'm not a Mariners fan, but I did love his speech where he said that one writer that didn't vote him in for having 3,000 hits and 260 plus in a season. Kudos to you for shouting out the loser that didn't vote you into the Hall of Fame. But I want to ask you first, before we talk about this class and we talk about some snubs in the Hall of Fame, I want to ask you your thought on the process that is the Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because that, unlike baseball, there are years where the Baseball Hall of Fame says, yep, we don't have anyone that's worthy. We don't have it. There's no ceremony. We're not inducting anyone. Whereas football will always have at least one person being inducted into the Hall of Fame. What's your take on the whole process, Wesley?
Well, so we're just, kind of, I think the process needs to be more clear and more open to the public and kind of be, and what people are using as far as nominations and why they're voting for them and why they aren't. I also do think that we've gotten too many times where this is more and more the Hall of Fame of very good or the Hall of very good. And I think there's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame that maybe they were really nice guys and the media liked them, but their numbers don't stand up. Just like there are people who are not in the Hall of Fame because they are jerks, which again should not fall into a category as far as whether you get voted for. So, but as far as the process, I think that it should be more open and honest, and we need to see exactly who votes for everybody. As far as I know you get a first 80% approval rating through the first committee, and then kind of stuff like that.
Well, I know that a lot of it is people that represent teams, therefore represent players, writers. They stand up in this meeting room. It's this giant room that has all these tables that are connected in a square, and they stand up and they basically petition for players on why they think these players should be into the Hall of Fame, especially those older players that are still waiting around to try and get in, even if it's after their passing. I know that Myron Cope did it for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ed Bouchette did it for a very long time. Now Dale Lally of the Steelers website, he's the one that's in there speaking his mind for the Steelers. But in terms of, you brought up stats. I think stats are important because we're talking about an individual award of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's not a team thing. How do you weigh individual stats versus team success as well? And then we'll talk about some snubs and why we think these players have both intangibles, or I guess tangibles, because we can actually see these things. What do you think?
Yeah, so when I'm saying stats too, I want to first of all factor in the era in which those stats were presented matters. Stats that were good 40 years ago are nothing today. Right. So I just want to be clear about that. I'm not sure. Okay. Team success, this is an individual award that goes in the NFL Hall of Fame. I'm not sure how much team success matters when you're talking about 22 starters, and how much, if one person doesn't have stats to back it up, where the team success factors in. I think the team success can be used as a bonus of, hey, their stats are right there, and they won these 4 Super Bowls. Just like, Pro Bowls. You know what? And we might talk about later some people who have a lot of Pro Bowls, but how many of those Pro Bowls were due to injury replacement versus they were voted on as a Pro Bowler? I think that matters. And especially as we get more and more in the era of people like not playing in the Pro Bowl over the past at least decade or so. So I think that the stats matter more than the team success for sure, because this is an individual award that we're going for.
I really wish, and they don't do this because they just
is this your why Terry Bradshaw should be in the Hall of Fame versus why he should not be in the Hall of Fame? Because his stats are not that great, but he's one of them.
No, they're not. But he played big in big moments, and he has Super Bowl MVPs on his resume, and so I understand why you would put him in. But
it was exactly why Eli Manning should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer.
So this is the thing. I really wish that the people that vote on this would have some forethought here.
Yep.
And I'll lead this. This will lead into my first snub. And, of course, both of the snubs, I have two in my head, they're both Steelers, shockingly. So I think this was in the early 2000s, the Hall of Fame group got together and they voted Buffalo Bills wide receiver Andre Reed into the Hall of Fame. And I remember thinking to myself, really? Like Andre Reed in the Hall of Fame? Seriously? But once they did that, that now set a bar for wide receivers and what you had to do to get into the Hall of Fame. So when one of my favorite players of my entire life being a Steeler fan, Hines Ward, retires and becomes eligible, I immediately look at, okay, Andre Reed is in. Chris Carter is in. Let's look at Hines Ward's statistics next to those two individuals. Hines Ward's stats are pretty darn close. And oh, by the way, he has 2 Super Bowl championships and was the Super Bowl MVP of Super Bowl 40. And they made rules about the guy because he was one of the most physical receivers of the modern era of the National Football League. And so all these things as a Steeler fan, you're like, you all let Andre Reed in. If you didn't let Andre Reed in and you said that the bar is much higher, you've got to be here, then Steeler fans wouldn't have such a gripe about Hines Ward still not getting observed and even getting he's never even been a finalist, man. That's what really chaps me a little bit. And now we're looking at a situation where Hines Ward's probably not going to be inducted until he's in that, I forget what the term is that they use for a player that's no longer, it's like the historical entry into the Hall of Fame. But that's my first one. Hines Ward, I will stand on this hill until the day I die, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
And I think one of the biggest things supporting Hines Ward for me is that when he made 4 consecutive Pro Bowls was 3 different quarterbacks, Cordell Stewart, L.D. Bell great Tommy Maddox, and rookie Ben Roethlisberger. That's 4 of his Pro Bowls are with those 3 quarterbacks. And you had Tommy Maddox playing 2 years in a row there in the middle of those. But I mean, Cordell Stewart and Tommy Maddox and rookie Ben Roethlisberger you're showing out when you're doing that. So, and then also, I mean, they still when y'all played the Cardinals in the Super Bowl, he was y'all's number 1 receiver. He didn't get the MVP at that time, but his
MVP was against Seattle in Super Bowl 40.
Right.
And he had a good game. All right, what's one of your snubs?
Well, I'll match your self team love with a Saints great that has been not in the Hall of Fame. It's Pat Swilling. So Pat Swilling, one of the premier rushers in the NFL, 5 consecutive Pro Bowls, All Pro 3 times. He won NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1991. He led the NFL with 17 sacks that year, which isn't a thing that used to happen back then. Like we talk about Trey Hendrickson did 17 and a half. That's kind of normal. But this is a guy that has 107 and a half sacks in his NFL career, and he has all the things that are above the numbers of what it takes to be in the Hall of Fame, and has still been ignored.
What do you think's keeping him out?
The fact that, one, he was on a terrible football team. I mean, you're just talking about the Saints of the late 80s, early 90s was not good. But also the fact he was a member of the Dome Patrol, which was the Dome Patrol defense, was the defense of the Saints. We had 4 linebackers, including Pat Swilling, who started the Pro Bowl together. And it was so he was involved there with Ricky Jackson, Von Johnson, and Sam Mills. It was a great 4 people, and so there's always been debate about which one of those was number 1, number 2, number 3, and how that went down. But they were all great. And again, the guy that won NFL Defensive Player of the Year with 17 sacks in 1991 and 107.5 in his career. That he's got the numbers to go in.
And this is where you talk about, I agree, at the very beginning of this conversation, you said there should be more clarity as to how these players are being selected. Yeah. I cannot stand for the life of me when you hear them say, them being the writers, there's too many Steelers of the 1970s in the Hall of Fame. I get it. They won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. And how L.C. Greenwood is not in the Hall of Fame. This was before sacks were a registered statistic, but if you look up his numbers when they go back and they've actually added those in, his numbers are astonishing. And he was a huge part of those 70s Steelers. It was great to see.
He had 4 sacks in a Super Bowl, didn't he?
Yeah. Yep. Yes, he did. I mean, this guy was, and he had the flash too. You know, he wore the gold shoes. He got fined every single week that he wore those shoes because they weren't NFL like shoes that they want him to wear. It was awesome when you see some of the other players from those 70s teams get acknowledged, but the fact that this guy cannot get in after all these years still just completely befuddles me. I didn't see him play, but at the same time, I listened to my dad and all these other people that saw those 70s Steelers, and they said, he was as dominant as any of those defensive linemen of the Steel Curtain. And it's because they say there's too many Steelers from that era in. What does that even mean? It's one of the greatest defenses of all time. You're just going to deny a guy that honor because, and he's dead, by the way, and you're just going to deny him that honor because, well, that team was really good and we don't want any more in there. That's a bunch of BS, in my opinion.
Well, and I think he was known as one of the guys that was like a pass rusher that was one of the first ones. If you're not going to get home, stop and get your hands up, because he was known for batting down passes when batting down passes wasn't a thing. And then honestly, like batting down passes didn't become a thing for 25 years after that. Like he was way ahead of his time as far as wanting to do that.
Any other snubs for you? Obviously, I went through my Steelers.
Yep, I got 2 real quick. One, not a lot of running backs get the snubs, but I'm going to give Roger Craig, former San Francisco 49ers running back, he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. He was the first player in league history to rush for 1,000 yards and receive for 1,000 yards in the same season. Did win 3 Super Bowls. First person to ever score 3 touchdowns in a Super Bowl. And so he was just a difference maker, and he was way ahead of his time as far as running backs receiving and running and running the ball at the same time. Like he just, I mean, years and years ahead of his time, because we're talking about the 80s when he's doing this. And that doesn't become a thing for 30 years, 25, 30 years. Yeah. But he was LaDainian Tomlinson before LaDainian Tomlinson, but he gets knocked because he didn't have the big rushing yards. Well, because he was picking up blitzes and catching the ball and getting touchdowns another way. So I hate the Roger Craig, and I don't know if there's a route back for him now. It's been so long. But he was.
Hey, quick sidebar. He was an underrated beast in Super Tecmo Bowl. We used to have the no Niners rule because it just wasn't fair when you had Rice and Montana. But Roger Craig was an underrated beast in that game because he was a pretty good player.
And I do agree with you on Hines Ward. I think that the great wide receiver debate about, now that Sterling Sharp is in, of who is being snubbed, it's between Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne. Those are 2 that put up great numbers, and both have the numbers too. But if we're debating between them, this is where it came down to what I was talking about, where Torrey Holt went to 7 Pro Bowls, Wayne went to 6, but 3 of Torrey Holt's were as a replacement, and he played with Isaac Bruce, so that kind of hit him a little bit about who was the best and who did this and all. Both of them incredible receivers, though, and I will give Reggie Wayne the credit that he stuck around and was 34 years old, made a Pro Bowl with rookie Andrew Luck. After doing all those years, he made another Pro Bowl with Andrew Luck in his rookie year, and so. I'm a Reggie Wayne supporter of needing to be in the Hall of Fame, and beyond all that, he was a good guy and good teammate and leader back then, especially what we found out with Marvin Harrison Jr. having to keep him out of trouble.
Well, and I'll say this too, is you talk about the Torrey Holts and the Reggie Waynes, and look at the offenses they played on. The greatest show on turf, pass-happy offense. Peyton Manning and the Colts, pass-happy. Hines Ward, not pass-happy offense, folks. They handed the ball to Jerome Bettis and said, okay, we'll throw it when we have to. So I do think that has to be weighed into the equation. Unfortunately, it just isn't. So But what do you think about this class of 2025 quickly before we call it a show? Eric Allen, Jared Allen, Antonio Gates, and Sterling Sharp.
Yeah, Antonio Gates obviously put up numbers for a long time. Not a lot of tight ends get into the Hall of Fame. Sterling Sharp's been one for me, is that he's needed to make it for years. And what he's always hurt by is the fact that he only had a 7-year career. But in that 7 years, he 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, led the league in receptions 3 different times, and on 2 different times led the league in touchdown catches. Just a incredible receiver. Now, again, we're talking about early 90s before all. I mean, this was offenses weren't crazy pass happy, but this is a guy that had 108 catches and 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns in 92 before all the crazy throwing the ball stuff. So he deserved it. And again, he was hurt by having a shorter career, but lost his career because of injury. But he deserved to be in the. And I can't imagine what it was like growing up in a house with Shannon Sharp. I mean, probably needs an award for that too.
Yeah, I think all these guys are pretty deserving if I look at it honestly. But I got to ask you, have you watched Happy Gilmore 2 yet?
I did.
And
I mean, it was what it was. It's too much of. We didn't need to keep going through that. We're sneaking alcohol and the alcohol problem that kind of kept going and going and going. I thought they did a good job of. I mean, it was a lot of paying homage to the first one. It was also a lot of Adam Sandler. If you can go back and look, his wife and 2 of his daughters are in this movie. Rob Schneider's son is in the movie. I think the thing that kept bothering me was, why is Bad Bunny in this movie? Adam Sandler has so many friends. Like, there's so many people that could have played that role, and it would have been more fun than every time I'm like, why is Bad Bunny in this scene? He played like the number 2 role in the entire movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thrown off by the Bad Bunny thing, but it was good. It was what it's supposed to be. It's silly. It's goofy. It definitely could have been way worse. I don't think it's not Grown Ups 2 or anything like that, which I don't think I've ever seen Grown Ups 2. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen Grown Ups 2. But
I've seen it a lot, man. It's funny.
But it needed to happen. They could have done a lot worse.
That's a good way of putting it. It's such a polarizing film. Like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm in the golf space a bunch. Like, people are like, I loved it. I hated it. It's like, can't you just watch a movie and laugh for 2 hours and just leave it at that?
Yeah.
And people like that, golf fans, like, if you're expecting a true golf movie, why are you watching Happy Gilmore in the first place? The first one was outlandish. It's not real. It's not going to happen.
Well, they really went into the we hate live golf.
Oh yeah,
and Scheffler, just the right amount of overdoing the going to jail stuff, but they kept bringing it. They kept going with it over and over again. But like, if they had done it again, I'm like, okay. But like, it's
just enough.
The Scheffler stuff was really funny. The Xander Schauffele stuff was so ridiculous and funny though, and the fact of how many lines professional golfers had in the movie was, I mean, they had like scenes and lines where they're trying to get them to actually be actors and be part of it. So there was some good stuff as far as that. Like that again, I could have done less with the we didn't need 30 scenes of him and John Daly sneaking alcohol. And the John Daly stuff was great, except for you did the same joke like 11 times. Like, stop it.
I will say that if you're not a golfer or a golf fan, you would still enjoy the movie, but you would miss a lot of these like hidden jokes about the Maxi League with Liv.
Or by not knowing who the professional golfers are. Because we didn't need Fred Couples eating desserts 11 times to either. Like, again,
I thought Freddie's my guy. I was fine with Freddie being in the movie as much as he wants. He's my guy. I love Freddie Couples.
Did you like when he called Jack Nicklaus Arnold Palmer?
That was Travis Kelce. He's like, oh, you're an Arnold Palmer? He goes, no, I'm Jack Nicklaus. But a lot of people say that. I thought it was great. I really thought it was a good movie because I had no expectations. Yep. And I just want to laugh. There's very few movies anymore where you just sit down and laugh and it's not serious and all this stuff. I do think that I'm not going to do any spoilers here, but man, the first 5 minutes, the storyline took a hard curve, and I was like, they did that? Really? That's insane.
Yep.
So, all right, man. Hey, tell us where you can find your Saints coverage as we lead up to the preseason.
You can find me on X at WhoDatWesley13 or the Dome Patrol podcast at Dome Patrol PCast, or you can find Dome Patrol podcast on all of your streaming podcast platforms. Jeff, where can we find you and your Steelers coverage?
Yeah, you go to find me on Twitter at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. Also at the Steel Curtain Network, wherever you get your podcasts, and steelcurtainnetwork.com. Wesley, it's been a fun show, man. Enjoy it. We'll talk next week. Take it easy.
Football's back.
Yes, sir.